Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Um, we're at the SMA Learning Series and we're at the top of the hour, so I'm just going to get started here to make sure we stay on time. We've got such a great presenter, Carolina Arango from City of Surrey, British Columbia. I, for one, am really excited to hear from her because I've heard so much about City of Surrey's forestry program, and I know they're doing really great things there. So excited to hear from her today. Well, before we get into that, if you've joined our learning series before, you know I like to do a little introduction about SMA before we kick in. So without further ado, I'll start that. And I haven't even introduced myself. I am Leslie Burkus. I am Executive Director at the Society of Municipal Arborists. So happy to have you here. I've been on the job since last September. I'm getting to know a lot of our members. I'm getting to know a lot about your programs across the world. And it's really wonderful to be able to do that because you're all so unique and you're doing such needed work. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for being a member. If you're not, hopefully you will consider joining us. So for today's agenda, again, a little bit of introduction about SMA. We're going to hand it over to Carolina Arango. She's going to talk about the city's tree protection bylaw and ordinance and how it's enforced. I know it's so tricky on private property, so I'm, for one, again, really eager to hear from her about how we manage that on private property, some new initiatives they have underway, and how they're using technology to reach their canopy goals. And of course, time for Q&A at the end. A few notes about today. Drop your name and where you're from in the chat. If you're on the Northern Hemisphere, I hope you enjoyed the longest day of the year yesterday. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're on the upswing. You're going to be headed towards more light for the rest of the year. So eager to hear where everyone's coming in from. This webinar is being recorded and I will share it after the event. And ISA CEUs are pending. I emailed them, asked, oh my gosh, where are our CEU numbers? They said, don't worry, just collect everyone's information and you can submit it afterwards. So at the end of this, I will drop a form in the chat where you will give me your certification number if you want ISA CEUs, and I'll submit those on your behalf. And then I have you on mute, but when we get to Q&A time, look forward to hearing your questions and what you might want to ask Carolina. If you're not familiar with SMA, we're on a mission to build the confidence, competence, and camaraderie of all professionals who manage trees and forests to create and sustain more livable communities. If you are making daily tree planting and care decisions in your community, large or small, anywhere in the world, we hope you'll consider joining us. And if you already, we're so happy to have you here. It can be a tough job. I was in your shoes managing tree planting contracts, answering homeowner questions, all that, and it can be a lot of work, but we know it's really rewarding work and it's nice to be with your people. So we're happy to do that for you. Some of the ways we do that is making sure you have a seat at the table. And we've been doing that since 1964 when we were founded. We are a 501c6 membership-based organization with international membership. I think I'm seeing some of those international or people from across the globe dropping their locations in the chat. We're a professional affiliate of ISA, which just means we have a great relationship with them to help people become members of both of our organizations, help people get credentials, help bring people into the field more often. And we're a partner in community forestry with the Arbor Day Foundation, Alliance for Community Trees, and the Urban Wood Network here in the US, and hoping that we can expand that across to our other countries too, hopefully in Canada. As I kind of alluded to just a second ago, we are your seat at the table. We want to represent you on things like urban forestry credentialing, which is currently happening between Society of American Foresters. ISA currently offers a municipal specialist credential. SMA is there to try and translate some of that for you and help you better understand what's going on with credentialing. We're representative with the iTree Executive Committee, with ANSI Standards, the Sustainable Urban Forest Coalition, all in a way to make sure that your voice is heard and that you can tell us and we can represent your interests to those organizations as well. And we're looking at being a lot more active on the advocacy side of things. The work you're doing needs to be represented to American Public Works Association at a federal level, at a global level. So we really want to make sure that we're your voice and really looking to take a bigger chunk of an advocacy perspective and saying, hey, urban trees need to be paid attention to. The people doing the work are really valuable, need to be paid attention to as well. Some of you might know us from our Municipal Forestry Institute. This year, we are not offering the full institute, but are instead taking a focus year. And that means we're doing a lot of work on strategic planning, making sure what's taught during that institute meets modern standards, and has some time to let us do some alumni events and then bring back people who graduated from the institute in the past. If you're not familiar with MFI, again, it's a leadership institute. It's not to come learn about proper tree planting, proper pruning cuts. It's to learn, how do I lead my urban forestry program? So more details to come. We just signed our contract on the location, and I'm not going to tell you quite yet, but it's a pretty cool location. I think you're going to like it. So we'll open registration in August for that. So be on the lookout. If you go to our website, you can sign up, and there's a link to put in your name and to get notified when registration opens. Many of you are familiar with our City Trees publication. It's a really awesome publication that highlights the people doing the work. It includes technical know-how, all focused on managing trees in cities. It gives you information, but it's also a great thing to use with your constituents. You can pull out articles, you can share it with them. This next month is going to have some urban forestry back to basics, which we kind of designed so you could copy and paste it, put it in a newsletter, share it with your volunteer group. So hopefully you're familiar with that. We're really proud of it. Every year, SMA does a conference. Typically, it's held with Arbor Day Foundation and the Partners in Community Forestry. This year is being combined with the World Forum on Urban Forest, being held in Washington, D.C., October 16th to the 20th. Registration is open. I know the full agenda is going to be posted here very soon, I think in the next week or so. So if you haven't already registered, do so. We really would like to see you there. SMA will be holding a networking reception on October 17th. And again, it's a great way. This is where you really get to be in person with your people. You get to network. Hope to see you there. The next SMA Learning Series. We do have one scheduled for July, but I didn't get all the details finalized on it yet to share with you, but I do have August set already. I'll drop a link in the chat for to sign up. This will be future-proofing the workforce, lessons learned at Virginia Tech's Urban Forestry Academy. Jamie King, the university arborist with Virginia Tech, will speak. And this is all about their internship program. And this is considered the missing rung on the urban forestry career ladder, entry-level positions to get people into the next stages of their urban forestry career. So he'll be chatting about that. I think you'll really like it. I know we're all looking for more workers. We want them to stay with us longer. It's a tough time to be recruiting people into urban forestry, into the workforce in general. So I'm really eager to hear from Jamie and see what Virginia Tech's been doing to get more people in the pipeline. If you haven't connected with us on LinkedIn, it's a great place to be with your professional network to stay up to date on SMA happenings. Join us there. There's a QR code for you to click, or just go on LinkedIn and join us, and hopefully follow us there. And finally, thank you to all of our members on the call. If you're not a member, we really hope you'll join us. These are your colleagues from around the world that you get to have contact with. Carolina, I got to know her from, trying to remember Carolina when we first got introduced, but it's been really great. I'm in the center of the US, Carolina's in Canada. I get to chat with her and find out more about the work she's doing. I can help connect her with others. We have our Arborist Exchange program that someone from Ohio applied for, and I'm helping connect him with somebody in Rhode Island. So there's all sorts of ways we can connect with people around the world because we're all doing the same work. It's so similar across the globe. And it's nice to hear that others are having the same problems you are, but hear how you guys are solving it and working on together. And one of those things I know is private property tree plantings, Carolina. So I'm going to hand it right over to you. I'm going to stop presenting here.
All right, thank you very much.
To hear from you. Thanks.
I think we started chatting more when I joined the mentorship program.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Has been a great experience through
Yeah.
SMA, and it's been really fulfilling for me, and probably what motivated me to do this. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to lose the visual, so let me know if it works.
I can see your screen. Needs to go to full. Yep, looks like it's in full screen now. I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I am Carolina Arango, I'm from Colombia, so it's pronounced in Spanish. But yeah, I've been here in Canada for 23 years. I moved here to go to university. I did business. I have a business degree, and then very quickly fell in love with the outdoors and decided I needed to do something that I loved. So went to forestry at BCIT, and that kind of led me through the path of urban forestry. I have been at the city of Surrey for 12 years now in this role. And every day I learn something new, and that's what keeps me going. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do. So I am a city arborist. That is not my official on paper title. My official title is environmental technician, but really my role is a city arborist, and I am part of the trees and landscape section, which is in the building division in planning and development. So that's kind of where my home is. And we deal entirely with trees on private property. So a little bit about the city of Surrey, for those of you that are not familiar, this is where we are in the world. And here is Surrey in comparison to the lower mainland here in the west coast of Canada. So it's a really large city. We are in competition with the city of Vancouver for becoming the largest city in the lower mainland. And I have a feeling it's going to happen really soon. A bit about Surrey. So these statistics, unfortunately, are from 2016, but you can see how it's a really large area. We have about 500,000 population. The latest number I saw from 2021 was 570,000. So you can see how it's increased from 2016 to now. So we are said to increase in population at about a rate of 1,000 people a month, which is a lot of people if you add up. So we're dealing with a lot of growth, and that reflects in the work that I do. You can see that we have a very large amount of immigrant population, and a lot of people are renters as well, 29%. So in this journey through my mentorship with SMA and leadership program I'm in here at the city of Surrey, I've come up with this sentence to describe what we do. And so we are serving the community of Surrey as stewards for the trees while bringing balance to the built environment. And that little piece at the end is what limits and what makes my job what it is. So in Surrey, we're growing substantially, exponentially, and in the middle of all that are our trees. So we're trying to keep as many trees as we can while allowing for growth in the construction area and in the city itself. My team is composed of my manager, and we've recently started to divide it into these three areas. We have the infill lot area. So these are single family lots that undergo construction or that have trees in them. Development area. So this would include anything that is a larger scale and that goes through the planning department to council. And we have a landscape architect and an arborist working in there. And we have the environment, which is a portfolio we recently acquired, and we're very excited about it. So we have an environmental planner and a technologist in there. Very new to us, well, I guess new a year ago, we were able to add co-op students to our team, and that has been amazing because we are giving the opportunity for people who are in school or recent graduates to gain experience. A job like my job title requires 3 years of experience. And so if you're a recent graduate, getting there is really hard. And it was really hard for me when I was in that position. So I'm very excited, and we all are in our team to be able to give that opportunity of getting experience and knowing what's out there. So it has been a great addition to our team. We have 3 amazing people right now who have helped us and have brought I call them young blood to our team and are giving us technology advice, and they just come with fresh eyes, which have helped us move forward and even revisit some of our work and to do it better. And at the core of our team is our clerk team. We have 3 clerks dedicated to our team, and they are the backbone of our little section, because they take all the calls, they book all the inspections, they open up all the computer program um, folders, and they just keep us together and keep us going. So we call them super clerks. So now let's go into the tree bylaw. So the tree bylaw is what we enforce. My section is based on it. It's entirely on private property. We do not deal with any trees on city property, but we do work together with parks to liaison whenever there's both, because in most cases there are both. There's city trees and private trees. So our bylaw defines a protected tree as over 30 centimeter DBH, diameter at breast height, or and a tree replacement. So any tree that is a replacement tree from a tree cutting permit or a development becomes protected regardless of size. And we do have a few species that are protected regardless of size as well. So we have Dawn redwood, giant sequoia, and the name escapes me. The other redwood, Pacific dogwood, and ginkgo. I'm not sure the reasoning why. Since I started, they have been in this list, but they are highly valued by our city, I suppose, our city council. So this is our starting point. This is where we start our work, defining what a protected tree is. With that definition, we also have the tree protection zone. We have it written in our bylaw that the tree protection zone is 6 times the diameter. So it's not that easy math, but that's what we've determined is a reasonable tree protection zone that allows the trees to be healthy and allows construction and other issues to go on. So we found through the years that this size is appropriate for us. There are definitely other factors that come into play in tree health, but as far as the tree protection zone, that's what we have defined. So I am going to focus on the infill lots side of things because this is where I am at. So in this area, we have 4 arborists, and we're all also tree risk assessors. And we have 1 co-op student. Sometimes we have more. The co-op students float as well, so they get to do a little bit of everything. But by definition, we have 1 dedicated to this area. And in this area, we deal with things like tree protection securities that we've collected as part of development. Single family building is probably the largest area we focus on because Surrey is so into development and growing so fast. So there is a lot of construction going on, and that takes a lot of our time, is dealing with construction sites and building, protecting trees through that, keeping as many as we can, and maintaining that balance. We do tree cutting permits in infill lots. So this is just someone who has a tree on their lot on private property who wants to remove it for X or Y reason. So we get to go and assess whether there's a reason to remove that tree under the bylaw. Then anytime we issue a permit, we require tree replacements and we inspect those as well. So a tree replacement needs to be planted following our guidelines that we've put together, and we go and inspect that it's been planted properly, and to make sure that in the future there's not going to be any problems and they're not going to be applying to remove that tree. And I mentioned at the beginning the tree protection security. So whenever someone's building and we keep trees, we collect a tree protection security of $3,000 per tree. And then at the end, when they get building final, we do an inspection to make sure that those trees weren't damaged and they can get the money back. And finally, we deal with a lot of infractions. Right now, it's crazy out there. It's gardening season, landscaping season, and everybody's redoing their backyards or front yards. And we're just swamped with calls of people severely pruning trees or removing trees. So this is kind of a little bit of my world. These are some numbers. This is the first quarter. We're almost at the end of the second quarter. And last I checked yesterday, we were close to 3,000 inspections. When we first quarter, you can see the number, it's a bit busy there, but we had 1,300, almost 1,400 inspections. And this is just the 5 of us. So it's a lot of inspections. We deal with a very high volume. And you can see how many plan reviews we did and arborist reports that we assess. And we do also barrier inspections for tree protection. I'll get into it a little bit later. Evidences, so we call that the infraction visits. We go and do an evidence inspection, and of 60 we did, 25 resulted in actual violations. And we also have an appeal process. So if anyone is not happy with the infraction or the requirements we've set, we have a way that people can appeal and have their voice heard. So let's get into a little bit more details on how we do this. So building, as I mentioned, is one of the largest components of my portfolio. And what we do is we process every single building permit, no matter what it's for, that comes into the city of Surrey for infill lots. So if you're building anything from a pool to installing solar panels, it comes to us and we review whether there's trees, whether there will be any tree impacts, and whether there's any requirements for tree protection that we need to place on the lot. So we show up and we do a site visit for most of them. Sometimes we don't do it for things like solar panels or interior renovations, but I would say 90% of the building permit applications that come through us, we do a physical site visit before anything starts. So we are the first ones from the building section that show up in the field. And so you can see the first picture, you can see the old house, and we go and take photos of all the trees and determine what to do next. So the options are, we either ask for an arborist report. So that means that the applicant will hire a consulting arborist to do the assessment of the building, the proposed building in relation to the trees. Or if there is up to 4 trees, we do it ourselves. And that just means we measure every tree and then we go back to the office and use a program like Bluebeam to plot all the trees and the tree protection zones and determine whether removals are required or whether tree protection and what kind of tree protection is required. So in this case, in this lot, I asked for an arborist report, and this is what it looks like in the photo at the top. The tree protection zones are always plotted. We've determined what trees need to come down to accommodate the house and what trees are going to remain. And what we need to do is in terms of tree protection. So we are going to ask for tree protection barriers and tree protection securities throughout construction. So all these trees to be removed will require a replacement of 2-to-1, and we also ask for a tree replacement plan so that we know where and how many trees can fit in the lot. Now, with building, it's very important to highlight that we are limited in a way by the zoning bylaw. So that means that if, and I should say, anytime I mention bylaw in the States, you would refer to it as ordinance. So the zoning bylaw determines what can be built in each lot. And so if they are allowed to build a 10,000 square foot home in this lot, we have to allow it. So it's very limiting in terms of trees. We don't have a lot of tools, but we can, for example, move the house and shift it to allow for more tree retention. In some cases, we flip the house. So that's just propose a mirrored image of the lot so that we can retain trees. And sometimes we work with parks to do this, because sometimes the boulevard trees are the ones of highest value and highest retention potential. So they will ask for that, so that the driveway is in the location of the old driveway and there's no impact to the existing trees. So those are some of the things we can do. Once we've determined all that, we require tree protection for the trees that will stay. And this is a photo at the bottom of the barriers. We are very strict with the barriers and we put signs on them. They all look the same. We try to be very consistent so that all the builders know what we're doing. But one of the things we are constantly thinking of is whether we can find an alternative that is less impactful to the environment. So you can see in the photo that we use wood and orange fencing, and that fencing is plastic. So we all feel in our team that it's very wasteful, and we're constantly looking for better options, which we're analyzing now, and to see if we can offer a more eco-friendly option to builders that is accessible and reasonable, and that we can be consistent with. Consistency is very important because Surrey is so large and so many people are building. It needs to be done. So then they go and get their building permit, build their house, and when they get building final, we come back. They book an inspection so that they can get their money back. We can see the trees are there. You can even see the tree replacements, and I can tell that one of them is going to fail because it's planted right underneath the power lines. But you can see the end product after construction. So it's kind of neat that we get to see the lots before anything happens and then right at the very end. So all the other inspectors in building go in the middle. They show up to do inspections throughout the construction. We're the ones that show up before and after. So it's kind of a neat circle of construction life. Moving on to our other area of tree cutting permits. So like I mentioned, if someone has a tree not linked to construction necessarily, and they want to remove a tree. So our bylaw has different reasons for which we can approve a tree to be removed. One of them is significant damage or hardship. You can see in the first photo at the bottom that this driveway has been significantly impacted and root pruning is not an option, so we would approve that tree to be removed. And we have a clause in our bylaw that says if a tree is within 2 meters of the foundation measured at press height, then we would approve that tree for removal. We consider that to be too close to a house. And so automatically, regardless of health, that would be an approval. And then we have in decline beyond expectation of recovery. So this is, if there's something wrong health-wise with the tree, then it's approved for removal. We do have another clause that is as per the manager. So that is when trees are, for example, a tree that is just, it's healthy, but it's in the wrong place and it's going to cause trouble in the end. So we discuss it as a team and we can make the decision to approve it. My favorite are the ones we deny. Well, number one, because we keep trees, and so that it's a feel-good moment for us. But we have really funny applications, and so some people don't like animals in their trees, and they blame the animals, and so they want to remove the trees because of the animals. For the most part, we say no. We've had any kind of animal, you name it, raccoons, peacocks, squirrels, rats, crows. So the animals are to blame for their hardship, but actually it's not the animal, it's the tree. So there's a misconception there. View, we do not allow tree removals for view. We do offer options of pruning and maybe doing some window pruning, but not just view. Removing an entire tree because of view is not an acceptable practice under the bylaw. We've had people say the tree is growing by the minute and it's terrifying. And mostly we find that people apply, it's because they don't know anything about trees and they are feeling nervous because the tree's swaying. So it takes sometimes just a conversation to let them know that what's happening is normal and the tree is healthy. And just saying that reassures them that it's okay. Once we approve a tree for removal, whether it's construction or just a regular tree cutting permit with a non-related to construction, we require tree replacements. The bylaw states that we have to require 2 tree replacements for every one removed, except if they are a cottonwood or an alder species. Those would be a 1-to-1. And this was set up before I even started. I'm not sure the reasoning. Some of us find those trees to be very valuable because they are our pioneers species here in the West Coast, but some people see them as weeds because they are the pioneer species and grow really fast and tend to have failure. But regardless, 2-to-1. In building, in construction, we do not allow for any let's see, I want to say we're not nice, but there's no wiggle room is what I want to say. If you cut 10 trees, 20 is the number to be replaced. However, most lots, like you saw in the example of my building permit, they will build a giant house and there is not going to be enough space. So we require a tree replacement plan to tell us how many they can fit planted and meet our requirements and our guidelines. And then whatever they cannot fit gets paid as cash in lieu. And all this money goes into what we call the Green City program. And the city uses this program money to invest in other initiatives like the tree sale that I'm going to touch on later on today, or some parks initiatives and something that results in more canopy elsewhere. And so cash in lieu is a very big part of our section because for the most part, we're cutting down trees and building something larger than was there before, so there's no space. And space is running out, so we collect a lot of cash in lieu. Now, if you do apply for a tree cutting permit and you're not related to construction, we tend to be a little nicer and we assess the lot to see how many can be planted, and that's what we require. And so anytime we ask for a tree replacement, we collect money. And if you can plant the trees, that money is refundable. And what we do is we require 2 inspections. One, when the trees are planted and the customer books an inspection, and then another one a year after. And so the first inspection, if approved, it gets half the money back. And then the second inspection, the rest of the money back. And that is to ensure that trees are kept in the ground. We have had the unfortunate situation where we've discovered companies renting trees, and that was very upsetting. They would plant the trees, get their money back, and then move them somewhere else. So the concept of going back a year after is to ensure that the trees are still there. And we have very strict guidelines. We make sure that they're not too close to any infrastructure, that they are away from services. Like I mentioned in the other picture, one was under the power lines. We do not accept that. And so we work to ensure that the trees are going to have the best start they can, and then they're not going to interfere with anything that we can see at that point in time. Fractions. These are the most stressful and sometimes fun. I get to play detective and we follow up on any complaint that comes to us. We have the capability of responding up to now to any complaint, anyone calling, my neighbor's cutting down a tree. We go and physically inspect to make sure that it's not a protected tree or that there's not a safety situation. And so we get calls from anything from trees being removed without a permit to disturbance in tree protection zones. If the barriers are removed during construction, we investigate that. Impact to root zones. Sometimes people build things without a permit right beside a tree and damage the tree. We also look at excessive pruning. Our bylaw has a clause in which we regulate pruning to a maximum of 25%, and we do not allow topping unless it's, for example, a dead top and it's better to remove it. And so we are starting to allow topping in very specific cases and accompanied with an arborist report. And since we added the environmental portfolio to our team, we are also investigating environmental impacts to water courses, floodplains, and sensitive ecosystem areas. So this photo over here, this was actually 2 weeks ago. These people were building an unpermitted carport and cut down 7 trees, plus cut all the roots of this very large, I estimated about 30-meter tall Douglas firs, which are very, very large Pacific trees. And it was just a safety hazard. I had to involve WorkSafe BC, and a stop work was placed on the lot, and it was scary. So sometimes I get to deal with these kind of things. I'm going to show you some other pictures of things that I deal with. For example, we got this complaint of trees being removed without a permit and not a very good faller because, as you can see, it fell on the house. This was actually reported by our own city manager. And so it was a exciting situation to go investigate. I mean, it was sad because we lost so many trees, but you know, it was quite dramatic. So I like that. And so this brings me to what we penalize people for. So within our bylaw, we can fine people up to $20,000 per tree, but our normal or most used value is $3,000. We can increase the value if we can prove that the tree was a significant tree of, you know, perhaps very large for its species, very mature, or with some characteristics that made it special, or if it's one of our heritage trees that is in our bylaw as a heritage tree, we can go up to 20,000. So the bylaw allows us to do infraction fees through our section up to $20,000 per tree. On top of all this, we always charge permit fee and tree replacements. So the fees increase. With our tree replacement fees are $500.50 per tree, and so it's a 2-to-1. So in this case, I believe it was 8 trees that they cut down. So we would get 16 trees at $550. So it adds up pretty quick. We can go through another avenue, which is long form charges. What this means is we work together with a bylaw officer and our city solicitor, and we go to court. So we put together reports and we take the lot owner, the registered lot owner or owners, to court. In these cases, the justice of the peace, who is the judge in provincial court, will determine what fines the person will face, and typically they get fined whatever the justice of the peace decides per registered owner. So over here in Surrey, we see a lot of owners in single family lots. So if there's 3 owners registered, each owner will get the exact same fine. So it can add up a lot. And typically what our solicitor recommends is what the justice of the peace goes with, sometimes more if they really don't like what people did. So that's long-form charges. That means we go to court, and in those cases, we get called, or I would get called as an expert witness to defend what the city did and the evidence that we collected. We can go a little lighter with what we call MTIs, which is a municipal ticket. It's pretty much just like a parking ticket kind of thing. And this can go from $500 to $1,000. Again, we have to work with a bylaw officer. We do not have in our section the capacity to issue the tickets ourselves. So we work with a bylaw officer to issue that. Our most successful tactic is to place a stop inspections or stop work. And this is very successful when there is a active construction, because a stop inspections literally means that none of the other building inspectors, plumbing, electrical, building, go out to do inspections. And so this delays the construction, and it means a lot of increased costs to the applicant. So whenever we have a situation in active construction, we go that way because we get remediation and we get compliance. And that's what we want, really. As much as I enjoy going to these dramatic scenes, we want to keep the trees. So we try to get compliance and remediation as much as possible. Finally, in a sensitive ecosystem, we may report to the province, depending on how bad and what kind of area it is. For example, we've had water courses filled in with fill, and so that gets reported and gets treated through our environmental planner, but we collect the evidence, my team of 4 arborists and the co-op student. So this is some more pictures. This is probably my largest infraction I've ever done. It was a complete clear cut of this very large lot. And you can see I had to sift through the pile of debris to figure out how many trees. This went up to close to $500,000, but we worked with the owners to reduce it to something that was a little bit more acceptable for everybody. But this was really bad. So some of the regulations that that formed our bylaw are the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. So these are the laws that allow the municipality to create a tree bylaw and for us to be able to enforce it. So it's very important to keep that into consideration when we're doing our work. That's where we came from. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we're bound by the zoning bylaw, which is what tells us what can and cannot be built. So now I want to get into things we are growing. And there's quite a few things that are happening in our team that are very exciting. And so I'm going to go through a few of them. First, internally, like I mentioned, we took the environmental portfolio, and you can see this image here is a snapshot of all the environmentally sensitive areas that are in our city, and we map it all. So it's kind of cool. So that way we can recognize when we're dealing with something in an environmentally sensitive area. We have our co-op students that I've mentioned a couple of times, and we're keeping that going. Just this week, a new round of students started. We have a new person, and it's very exciting to get to show them everything that we're doing. And I'm looking forward to new ideas. We're trying to break down silos. We are working a lot with parks. I think some of my parks counterparts might be here today, and we're trying to make sure that things flow easier and reduce the boundaries and the red tape that sometimes is perceived by the applicants. We're advancing in-house knowledge, and this I have to take ownership. This was something that I brought into the team. I decided to bring an education portion to our team meetings. And so in our general team meetings where our clerks join us, we do a tree ID portion at the end of the meeting, and people volunteer to come and bring a tree and present on it. So that's very exciting. Even our clerks have been doing some of the presentations themselves. So we have been enjoying that a lot. And then in our tech meetings, we get a little bit more technical, and we've been bringing in tree diseases and pests to present to the team so that we keep learning and we keep, being the best we can. Finally, we're working really hard, and this is constant, to create standard operating procedures. Like I mentioned at the beginning, consistency is very important for us. And so we're trying to keep it on paper so that we all can have something to refer to, or when our co-op students start, so that they have like a bit of a manual that they can refer to on how to make decisions of certain types. Things were growing externally. Relationships with consulting arborists. Just about a month ago, we hosted a consulting arborist get together. We had over 80 people show up here at the city of Surrey, and we had muffins and coffee, and we hung out. We had showed the new faces of our team to the consulting arborists we deal with. We talked about our tree bylaw, and we established a relationship. So that was really fun, and we are motivated to keep doing it, perhaps adding an education component to it in the future. We're not quite sure how it's going to look, but it was successful, and we want to do it again. We've created terms of reference for the consultants so that they can have a document that they refer to whenever they are doing some work that we've required. We have bulletins for residents, and we're keeping up with our website to try and offer the best service we can, and so that it's easy to find information. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Green City program collected the money to use into green initiatives, and a lot of them in parks. With that money, we fund the tree sale that Parks holds a couple of times a year. I think we're having it 2 times this year, and they offer trees at an affordable price to City of Surrey residents, and they can go and pick them up from the works yard. So it's been very successful, and it motivates people to plant a tree on their lots. There is also what we call a tree voucher, and you can see an image here. Basically, any City of Surrey resident can come and buy a tree voucher. They pay $50, but it's worth $75 at one of the 2 garden centers that we work with. So basically, we are sponsoring $25 to go towards a tree. We are currently in the process of revisiting this to make it a little bit more accessible and more successful so that we can see more trees being planted on private property. Technology. Well, we have been inventorying our private trees since 2018, and we are reaching a point where we are hint, looking for a student, a grad student, or someone who can help us create statistics and do something more cohesive with the data that we have. And it's very exciting to see that my rainbow map is what I call it. So this is a zoomed out version, and then here you can see, if you zoom in, you can see the different types of trees that we have. We have trees removed for tree cutting permits, for regular trees being removed in a lot. And then we have tree retention permits. Those are related to construction. So you can see the different mix. We collect all the data on trees retained as well as removed, infractions, and replacement trees. At the moment, this is a layer that is only available in-house, internally. I'm not sure if we're ever going to go public, but it's a very important tool for us and for the bylaw officers, because they can very quickly have a visual whether we've approved a permit or not at a lot. So we're excited to see where we go with this data. And then I have some wishes. These are personal wishes. This is what I have been working on as part of my leadership journey. And I've been involved in a project with Parks. This was separate from my own work, where we created an app that judged environmental equity and suggested tree planting locations for parks in boulevards where there is a high need for tree canopy and a high need in terms of environmental equity. So my wish is to use this technology that we've created and hopefully find a way to use it in private property. So more to come on that. I'm very motivated about this. And the way I envision it is using education, targeted education in these areas of high need to plant more trees on private property and see a result in increased canopy cover. And my other wish is to create an Ask an Arborist button. We currently have access to questions. There's service requests, and we have an email, a tree bylaw email, but it's not as straightforward. So I envision a very highlighted Ask an Arborist button in our website where it would lead to perhaps an email, and then it would get spread out because we would probably receive questions about trees regardless of where they are, so we could delegate the information and move it to where it needs to go. So this is all my wish list, personal wish list. And just, I thought I'd show a couple of fun photos of things that make me grin. Remember the big giant evidence I showed you guys, the infraction? Well, this boat was in the middle of the lot with a tree growing out of it. It was really fun. And then there's this tree in South Surrey where you can actually walk through it and the homeowner loves it. And it just makes me so happy. The homeowner actually took that picture of me. And with that, I always like to finish my talks with this quote from Dr. Seuss. I speak for the trees have no tongues. And I feel that that's what we do for trees on private property. And you can see my contact information on the screen if you want to reach out. I'm happy to talk about trees. That comes to the end. Yeah.
Carolina, that was so good. And I'm like drafting a Law and Order Arborist Unit story in my head so that you can be like the star of this new reality TV show. I can just imagine you running down to the site and making sure that people aren't doing any infractions. Well, could you stop sharing your screen?
Yes.
And thank you so much. God, there's so much good information. Please drop your questions into the chat. I'm going to take people off of allow mics here. 1 second. Okay, so if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. You can come off mute and ask it. Carolina. Okay. You all are muted now, but you can come off mute if you have a question. Carolina, are you still there? We lost your camera.
Yes. Oh, no.
There you are. Okay.
I'm here. Yes.
So we had a couple of questions. Can you elaborate on the tree retention permit?
Tree retention permit. So basically, I think perhaps what you mean by that is when we are dealing with building permit applications, the trees that we make people keep, those are our tree retention, the retention trees. And so in our inventory, they get marked as trees retained, but we also mark the ones we remove so that we keep track of both removals and retention.
Okay. Frank, let us know if you have any follow-up. Hopefully that answers your question. Jimmy asks, can you elaborate on tree voucher? Their municipality is looking for a way to get more trees on residential property or near the tree right-of-way. So more about the voucher program.
Yeah, so a few years ago, we teamed out with 2 nurseries who agreed to and a tree voucher for us. And so basically what we do is we sell the voucher here at City Hall. People come and buy it from us for $50. But then when they take it back to the nursery, they have to purchase a tree, and then that voucher is worth $75. So that way, we sponsored $25 towards a tree, and it's been quite successful. We had it on pause during the pandemic because we didn't have customer service here at City Hall front facing, but now it's back, and we're trying to re-envision it so that it can reach more people, perhaps teaming up with more than two nurseries and having more availability.
How's that relationship work with the nursery? How do they recoup that cost?
So they submit the used tree vouchers to us, and then through our finance department, they get sent basically a check afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We had some comments earlier about some other tree protection. And that was really interesting to think about the orange fencing and how bad that is for the environment and how just the negative impacts on that. So we had some people mentioning that. Let's see, trying to get back up there. Using metal construction panels for tree protection. Frank, you can, if you want to mention any more about that. And then we had another comment about using other fencing.
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
So we've explored the metal fencing, and we've allowed it as a pilot project in a couple of situations. What we find is, number one, is not as visible. So we've tried making people put like flagging tape, but then it brings the tape again. And then it's movable. So unless it's properly anchored to the ground, it kind of defeats the purpose, because it's very easy to just lift it and move it. So we're trying to find a way to make it stable and so that people don't move it.
Sure. Yep.
I'm welcome to ideas. This is something we're currently and constantly thinking about and revisiting. So yes.
I see some comments asking, oh, Frank, go ahead, bring yourself off mute and feel free to.
Yeah, so as one of the other people mentioned on the chat there, we were encouraging to, first of all, anchor to the ground using spikes or rebar, then also clamping the panels together so that they now work as a unit. And thirdly, clearly identifying them with a sign that this is tree protection fencing, and any tampering with it will be a penalty under the bylaw department. So it hopefully sends the message, and it's reusable over and over again, which is a real advantage.
Yes. Yes, thank you. I will take that into account.
I just dropped the link for the ISA CEUs if you need to jump off. I'll also be following up in an email, and I'll include that link as well. Milo, feel free to bring yourself off mute.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Carolina. That was wonderful. I'm a city arborist for New Westminster, one of your neighbors there. Sounds like our bylaw is very similar to yours, although we're doing it on a much smaller scale, obviously. I have many questions. One I wanted to ask you, though, is this issue with the significant damage and hardship. I'm wondering if that's defined in the bylaw, or maybe if you could just talk about how you go through those processes. We don't have any language in our bylaw for wrong tree, wrong place, or nuisance issues, things like that. Even the 2 meters of foundation, we don't have anything like that. So we've run into some issues with some angry homeowners who, have a tree, the wrong tree in the wrong place, and we basically say it doesn't meet our bylaw criteria. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, so basically your question is about whether we have anything written in the bylaw that's defines significant hardship. The answer is no, but we do have a standard operating procedure. So this is kind of our way to defend it. This is legally accepted as a standard procedure for our section, and we're consistent with it. So if we get challenged legally, it would stand. And basically, we have one specifically for driveways, and it defines, we use the park's language combined with our language so that we are all consistent in what is considered significant damage for a driveway or a sidewalk. And so we have different measurements and definition of how much damage it is. And so we have similar language with foundations. People always blame the trees for cracking their foundations, which is not true. but we do have definitions in our standard operating procedures, and I'm happy to share all that information. Yeah.
Excuse me. I know we're at the top of the hour. Joseph, thanks for pointing that out about some questions in the Q&A. Carolyn, if you have time for just maybe another 5 minutes, we'll hang on here and answer a few more questions. Okay. And if you have to go, understand this is being recorded, but we'll just hang out here for a few more minutes. So Joseph, can you tell us more about the bulletin for residents or any other public communication tools? How often, what media, what information is shared? So how do the residents find out about the program and the work?
Yes, so thank you. So the bulletins that we provide to the residents are specifically worded so for people that are not experts. And so we have one for tree replacements, we have one for how to apply for a building permit, we have one for how to apply for a tree cutting permit, and we provide them in different ways. The main way that we've been using it is through our website, and this was highlighted in the height of COVID because we went completely digital at that point. And so we basically send the links to people who inquire through our tree bylaw email, or if we're dealing with a building permit, we send the links to the applicant through the initial email making contact. So they can access it through the website. That is the main way. However, we do keep a printed version here at City Hall for anyone that wants to have that. And we also carry the PDF files, which was also like an old way of doing it, where we can send that version if they can't open the links for some reason. Yeah.
Thanks. I bet that's a big part of it for people to understand what's going on and helping them understand what might happen if they are going to do new construction. Sylvan asked, do you have written standards to guide developers with best management requirements for planting replacement trees? So how anything written for developers for when they're planting replacement trees?
Yes, so we have a standard tree replacement guidelines, and whenever we require tree replacements, we also include how to plant a tree, and the link from the Trees Are Good website so that people know how to plant it. So we provide a lot of information as well as a list of ideas. It's not a set list of species, it's a list of ideas of types of trees that you could plant, because some don't know anything about trees and don't know even where to start. So we provide a little bit of help that way. And we do not differentiate in this case between developers and not. However, if we've asked for an arborist report that includes a tree replacement plan, that becomes a tool for the developer to follow that plan, and it helps them in planting the trees at the end of their construction. In large developments, for say a subdivision or multifamily, our landscape architect and our arborists in that side of things, they review actual landscape plans, and so we expect them to work with their own landscape architect and landscapers to provide that information to the developers.
Well, thanks for that so much. Joe, I saw your comment about log and order, your presentation you did. So I think we've got something here. We are going to have the next big hit. It's going to be on HBO, on Netflix. We're going to have everything. We've got some stars already, I can tell. Let's start wrapping up here. I think you're going to get a lot of people reaching out to you, Carolina, because I think you're probably the envy of a lot of people with that really wonderful bylaw, but I know it's probably very challenging too to keep on top of all that. So thank you for everything. Asking if the PowerPoint will be available for reference. Carolina, I think you're probably okay if we share that out afterwards.
Yes, please. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I will follow up with the recording, the PowerPoint, Carolina's contact information. Thanks so much for joining. If you're a member, thank you. If you're not, please consider joining us, and we will look to see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everybody.